I too would like to thank Women's Place for putting on this event, and really just to say what an honour it is to stand on this stage. My talk comes out of a project that I just finished, which was writing a chapter on gender identity workbooks for the volume edited by Heather Brunskell and Michele on the invention of transgender trend. And my talk this evening is about a set of ideas. Those ideas can be summed up by the label gender identity. And I'm going to start off by trying to sketch out the ideas which belong with this term. I think it goes something like this. We all have a gender identity. It's a deeply felt internal sense of self, a kind of gendered soul. Only we know our gender identity, our authentic self, though we can be helped to read this inner soul by gender experts who are gender identity guides and workbooks, who give us a gender vocabulary, who help us to recover our gender memories and free us up to select our gender expression. All through history, in every culture, people have had an inner gender self. Sometimes they've been free to express this, sometimes less so. All through human history, there have been some people whose inner gender self doesn't match or isn't congruent with their body. How can that happen? You understand all of this is pre-indirect speech. When your body is also gendered by culture in a way that may not match your gendered self, and if you have a body-soul mismatch as well as an inner-outer mismatch, that can be extraordinarily painful. So painful and distressing that it may be life-threatening. Now what we know for sure, the story goes, is that your inner gender self can never be changed because it's your authentic self. Your body is less important, but more visible to the external world. Although this mismatch has already always existed, the great thing is that since the mid-20th century, we've been able to medically correct this body-soul or body-mind mismatch. And with the arrival of puberty blockers at the end of the 20th century, we've been able to correct the body-soul mismatch in children before the damaging effects of puberty misalign the body with the sense of self. This technological advance, think of it like insulin for diabetes or a cancer cure, allows a great improvement in human happiness and freedom, the liberation of authentic self. The failure to allow access to this life-saving intervention may create such intense distress in mismatched young people that they become vulnerable to self-harm and even suicide. That's one possibility. But there are others, and I want to ask why it's been so hard to explore other narratives than the one I've just provided. Now, it's true that gender identity ideology comes in different versions. You might believe, like Jan Morris, that gender is a kind of soul, not physical at all, altogether insubstantial. Or you might believe that it's a physical reality rooted in the structure of the brain, an inextricable material fact that is not yet proved, but will be one day. Or you might, like Serrano, view it as a mystery, a profound, inexplicable, intrinsic self-knowing. But what we can say, I think, are that these ideas are not based in reason. If you're under 25, some version of these ideas is likely to seem to you both obvious and natural. And it's likely that those protesting our meeting share some of these beliefs. It's not surprising that they do so. For these beliefs are now deeply rooted in academia, in the NHS, in media, government, and education. The website of the Office for National Statistics cites the definition of gender identity coined by the psychoanalyst Robert Stoller in 1964. We have consultants in gender dysphoria and a professor of gender identity. What's strange to me is not that these ideas are widespread, but that a definition constructed to understand the experience of some is now applied to all.
And I want to know why so much energy has been expended in trying to silence a group of often older second-wave feminist women who've been trying to offer a choice of explanatory models. Why have feminist academics, philosophers, historians, literary historians, sociologists, scientists, disability activists, along with intersex campaigners, autism advocates, gender-critical clinicians, mothers, lesbian and gay campaigners, lawyers, detransitioned women and men, why have they been called a host of names? Why has their self-identification as concerned and thoughtful people been ridiculed and rubbished? Why do they struggle to get publishers? Why are their careers threatened? Why do they get protested and shouted at? I think it's because their voices are too powerful, their logic so strong. After all, when the wonderful Charlie Evans, and I quote, started looking, she said, at the sort of Twitter accounts that the queer community turf block, she turned from trans to turf. I think that to understand what's happening now, it helps us to look back in history to earlier generations, to think back, as Elaine Showalter said, through our mothers. Because what we're doing when we uncover the gender ideology in school books and gender identity guides, in NHS websites and YouTube videos, in academic articles and diversity training, is, to my mind, just what Mary Wollstonecraft did in 1792, when she looked at advice books and teaching materials provided for women in her time. The conduct literature which told women what they could be, that tied them into abusive marriages, and as she put it, bastilled them for life. Wollstonecraft critiqued a model of femininity that had been produced by those she admired, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, whose thinking on education and politics fueled the ideas of the French Revolution, by James Fordyce and John Gregory, who believed that they were working in women's best interests. Yet Wollstonecraft saw that these political allies denied women the ability to be fully rational and limited their intellectual and passionate lives. Without access to rationality, Wollstonecraft believed, women would be turned into playthings for men. Without rationality, women were denied access to full humanity and to the Christian idea of the soul. For Wollstonecraft did not think that the soul was gendered. It's what Betty Friedan did in 1963 at the beginning of the second wave of feminism, when she read through archives of women's magazines from the 1940s, 50s and 60s and discovered that the great march of historical progress had temporarily gone into reverse. Women, she discovered, were being sold a quasi-religious myth, which she called the feminine mystique. According to the dominant narrative of her time, framed, in that case, for white middle-class women, woman's true inner self could only be fully realized by becoming a perfect homemaker, wife, mother, and consumer. This myth, Friedan thought, popularized Freud's ideas about womanhood. Career women, women who put intellectual curiosity before the deep inner drive to nurture, to abandon self to support husband and children, would always, they were told, be unsatisfied and unhappy. Friedan argued that women needed to develop intellectual curiosity and to explore the great issues of their time. Wollstonecraft and Friedan took on ideas which were deeply rooted in culture and which were portrayed as positive for women. They showed that how we think of ourselves is created in part by culture, by what we read, by what we see. Our inner sense of self is populated by images from the world in which we live. We can only build a self by examining the myths of our own time. The work of challenging consensus and critiquing myths should be, I think, central to the work of the university. But today, we fight back on Twitter, on Medium, in academic books published by fringe publishers, in conversation, and on the platform provided by a woman's place. And the fight is an important one, because gender identity beliefs have real-life consequences for children, for young people, for women. These beliefs can trap people into thinking that they have no choice, that not fitting gender stereotypes means that there is something wrong with their bodies. The director of the NHS Gender Identity Development Service regularly celebrates the ways in which young people are exploring gender. But I lament the failure of the service to offer an alternative way of understanding gender that would help them to accept their bodies. In my view, the proliferating gender identities are like the range of soap powders you can buy in your local supermarket. The packaging is different, but they come from the same multinational company and all damage the environment. What we need, I think, are not more gender labels, but the choice to understand gender in a different way, to see that gender is part of the world we inhabit rather than an inner soul, to see that we do not need to change our bodies to fit our sense of self. If we change our bodies, that's our choice, but that we are okay as we are. Today's new gender myth, in my opinion, is a new version of an old story. In fighting this myth, we are carrying on the struggle begun by women of previous generations. Because history does not go straight upwards. We constantly veer off the road of progress. Progressive ideas can be captured and changed, repackaged and sold back to us in forms that limit our freedom. Today, we need to think back through our mothers if we are to protect the freedom of our daughters and of our sons.